Earthlings, how are you doing? So I've always been wary of political campaigning for other animals. Not that it will never happen or that it won't ever work. It's more to do with when, in the sense that it seems to me that we need widespread cultural change before we can get political change. It just seems obvious to me that that's the case. Otherwise, you're going to have a speciesist system trying to bring about legislation for other animals. And the speciesist laws, or the laws that a speciesist parliament have brought in so far, have never been very good. And always animal welfare. Now, there's a really interesting example that has just popped up in Ireland, which I want to go through. But before I do that, have a quick look at this. This is a podcast I did in 2013 with Kim Stallwood. Now, Kim's been vegan since 1976. He was part of the radicalisation of the British Union for the abolition of vivisection in London or in England. And he became one of the staff after radicalisation. I was on the committee. They moved into political campaigning fairly early, by about 1983, and I could never quite understand why they would do that, because, as I said, seems to me that this cultural change is more important. So let me show you a clip that was only about a week ago, because there's been an investigation of pig farms in Ireland, and this is a question that was asked in Parliament, in the Irish Parliament, by Paul Murphy, TD, Member of Parliament. And then you get the Taoiseach, the Irish Prime Minister, answering. So let's have a quick look at that. And to me, this goes to show the limitations of political campaigning.
This morning I went to a screening organised by the National Animal Rights Association.
Right, so that's the first point. The National Animal Rights Association and also Animal Rebellion Ireland did this expose of the pig farms. And this TD, Paul Murphy, went to it. So this guy will have been briefed by these groups. Now, whether they would have briefed him in terms of animal rights, I don't know. But as you'll see, what he talks about is the conditions. So everything is getting translated already by the person asking the question to welfare, either from rights or it wasn't brought up in the first place. So Murphy talks about other animals being sentient, but then he says the conditions. There's no daylight, there's no comfortable bedding, welfare issue, no space, welfare issue. They were in farrowing crates, they were in sow stalls, and there was quite a lot of dead and what he called maltreated pigs. All these were welfare issues, and he called for an investigation.
An animal rebellion. It was footage taken from 2 randomly selected pig farms in Ireland, and it was extremely harrowing footage. These are very smart, sentient animals. No daylight, no comfortable bedding, no space, massively crammed together, farrowing crates, sow stalls, fattening pens, and then dead and dying pigs, like just really, really maltreated, and then a whole bunch of dead pigs left. What's going to happen about it? Will the state have at least an investigation?
So, will the state have an investigation? So, we're asking a speciesist state to have an investigation about a speciesist industry. And as I said, it's all been translated back to welfare if it began with animal rights in the first place. And then, of course, we have the Prime Minister or the Taoiseach's response, and it's all welfare, as you'll see.
Conditions in the pig industry.
Thanks. Just in relation to Deputy Paul Murphy's issues that he rose around animal welfare and conditions in pig farms, I'd certainly encourage anyone who has evidence of animals being mistreated to pass on that evidence to the relevant authorities, and that they should, of course, investigate them.
This morning I went to a screening.
Yeah, so of course there should be an investigation. Thank you for bringing up this animal welfare issue. And this is always the point. You cannot, within a deeply speciesist society, bring about animal rights legislation, because they just are not able to deliver it. There's no way that a speciesist parliament could ever deliver animal rights. So these groups talk about banning this and banning that and banning the other. They're asking a speciesist system to help other animals. And the only way, as usual, that these systems can make sense of the issue in the first place is to reduce it to animal welfare. And yeah, they'll then have an investigation, which will probably take months, if not years. And then they'll come up with some recommendations, which will be welfare based, which will be about reforming, which will be about tinkering, which will be about tidying up. This is the only way that things can happen in this. There's some really interesting work from a sociologist called Richard Gale, and he talks about this kind of triad, this three-part system, where you've got a movement and a counter movement. So say the vegan movement and say the pig industry. And then you've got the state in the middle, as it were. What is the state going to do? Because they're operating in a speciesist system, the state, if they get enough trouble from the movement, are going to go to the industry and say, you've got to clean up your act. That's the only way they can make sense of this. You know, we'll bring in some laws to make you do that. But they won't bring in laws to shut them down. They can't, because it's a speciesist society. There's demand for these speciesist products. And, you know, that is not on the table for politics and can never be until we get widespread cultural change, which is why I always say that cultural speciesism is our number one target. It must be, because if we can't shift that, we can't alter that perception, that ideology, then we're not going to get very far. And we are then going to be limited to just these welfare reforms.